Right, Proverbs 11, let's call this one On Earth because that term literally comes up in the last verse in the chapter that reminded me that even though it can seem like wicked can go on forever unpunished, it's going to say that if the righteous are repaid on earth, how much more the wicked and sinners. Understanding that sometimes my vision can focus on what I want to see, and even though I don't want to focus on my misery, as we say from time to time, sometimes it can be so bad that it is all I can see. And Proverbs like this help me to reframe the issue, as we say from time to time, to remember that God, even though we can miss it, is dealing with wrongs with a level of wisdom that simply functions beyond my pay grade or my understanding. In this proverb that once again follows that contrast model, often giving us a contrast between the righteous and the wicked. Again, at least by my count, it's going to do that some roughly 17 times, or at least in roughly 17 verses. And a few of those verses that caught my attention are verse 1. A false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. Understanding that in a world that seems to function or thrive on injustice, we can forget that God actually cares about just weights or just things or simply doing what's right. However, there is a theme that David brought out, and that is the way in which the wicked are caught in the snares that they set for others, that Solomon is also going to pick up in a number of verses, not the least of which being verse 5, where he says, the righteousness of the blameless keeps his way straight, but the wicked falls by his own wickedness. Verse 6 reading, the righteousness of the upright delivers them, but the treacherous are taken captive by their lusts. Verse 8 will go on to say something similar when it says the righteous is delivered from trouble and the wicked walks into it instead. And that might not be the wicked walking into his own trap, but it talks about the ways in which God will be hands off on a day in which the wicked could otherwise be saved from trouble. Going on, he's going to talk about the way in which we once again need to be careful about the way we use words in verse 9. With his mouth, the godless man would destroy his neighbor, but by knowledge, the righteous are delivered. Verse 11, by the blessing of the upright, the city is exalted, but by the mouth of the wicked, it is overthrown. Verse 12, whoever belittles his neighbor lacks sense, but a man of understanding remains silent. Verse 13, whoever goes about slandering reveals secrets, but he who is trustworthy in spirit keeps a thing covered. But the thing that most caught my attention is once again that familiar theme of sometimes seeming to see hopelessness around us to the extent we care about justice. But the way in which David and now Solomon remind us that God is not asleep at the wheel when it comes to setting things straight. Something that we may be able to see throughout this chapter when verse 4 says, riches do not profit in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. Verse 7, when the wicked dies, his hope will perish, and the expectation of wealth perishes too. Verse 21, be assured, an evil person will not go unpunished, but the offspring of the righteous will be delivered. Verse 23, the desire of the righteous ends only in good, the expectation of the wicked in wrath. And as we mentioned, the final verse in the chapter reads, if the righteous is repaid on earth, how much more the wicked and the sinner. Chapter 10, having reminded us that the success of the wicked can come along with a level of misery they never expected to be woven into their success. This chapter reminding us of the way in which their success is on the clock, understanding that there is an endurance to success that God adds to those who will wait on him to make them successful. A realization that Solomon didn't seem to invent, understanding that it is one we have heard before from his father David, and quite possibly heard going back to even our discussion, as we mentioned, of Job. But to benefit from the wisdom, Solomon didn't need to invent it. He simply needed to listen and allow the wisdom that God used to bless his father David to quite possibly bless him too. This time, quite possibly giving him a level of endurance that not everybody had in a time when injustice seemed to be winning.